Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Black Men Speak. I'm Catherine Robertson-Pilling, and this is the third public conversation with 3 men I'm privileged to call my friends, Cal Harris Jr., Ali Joseph, and Joshua Kamara. When George Floyd was murdered, I reached out to these 3 men, and the idea for these conversations was born. Cal Harris Jr. is a contemporary jazz artist based in Phoenix, Arizona. Ali Joseph is a priest in the Anglican Diocese of Johannesburg, South Africa. And Joshua Kamara is an entrepreneur in Sheffield, England. For my story and why I, as a white woman, am here, I invite you to watch our first episode, which you'll find in YouTube. I want to emphasize before we begin, I am not an expert or a scholar. I may very well get some things wrong here. But I know how to ask questions and I know how to listen, and now is the time to exchange our stereotypes for real understanding of real people. This series has been a bit of an experiment, and we are co-creating this together as we go, the 4 of us. For our first episode, 2 episodes, we've decided now to shift to shorter episodes around relevant themes. So for the next 20 minutes, I invite you to sit back and listen as today we talk about white privilege. So here we go. I really just want to open this up to the 3 of you because for me, as a white woman raised in Houston, Texas, I could not see my own white privilege until probably 5 months ago. Less than that. It was definitely after George Floyd's name hit the news and we all began to really explore how we got here. And it was painful, you know. I had heard the term, I had resisted seeing, you know, because I feel pain, I suffer, I have all of my own insecurities and challenges too, and I just couldn't see until I really began to look at all the things that I can do because I have white skin that the 3 of you, for example, cannot do. So I want to open it up and I want to ask you to share your experiences and what comes up for you out of your life experience or in your heart when you hear that term.
I'm just gonna go. Sorry, guys, I beat you to it. But like white privilege has always been, for me, it's always like something that nobody spoke of, but like we all lived. It was always like, you know, white is better than, you know, white is better, and like white have more, and white is privy to more, and white can do more, and it's like walking down the street, like white people will, you know, they will, without thinking, if there's like people of color walking down the street, the white person would just like walk on the other side, or um, like sitting in a bus. Like in South Africa, it's always like we don't mix, we don't mingle, and it's like but it's always this thing that like we don't talk about the fact that like white people are always considered to be right. White people are always gonna be considered to be like better. Like, and then when you speak to white people, like I remember Catherine and I, we had this many years ago. We spoke about this, and I said to her that like sometimes, you know, it's like it's it's so subtle. It's like nobody makes anything of it, but it's always there that white people are always better. Like white people always expect things to be done for them, to be, you know, to be better for them. And, you know, in a way, in where I come from, we've accepted this. You know, we have not, you know, we've over the years, we've become, you know, almost like accustomed to it, that, you know, white person is always better than people, and like we always defer to white people. We're always like, okay, a white person knows the answer, or a white person knows, how to do something, or a white person has this. Like for instance, if we don't have something in the house, the white person always has it. And it's like the white person must always like, be allowed to do something first because they'll do it better. And, this is how I grew up. This is how I've come to understand white privilege, and that white people are really privileged because um, now people will tell me that no, everything is like it's equal now. We're equal, and like, but like white people, they have the money. They stay in the right neighborhoods. They know the right people. They have the right connections, and that is the privilege of the white skin, and that we don't have.
Mhm. It's like historical entitlement.
Yeah, because for us, it's been written into our our
Right.
collective consciousness as non-whites that the white person is always better.
Mhm.
It's,
Mhm.
yeah. And in our dealings with one another, it's like when a white person speaks to you, it's always from a position of authority, a position of like they always have, they always they're always like yeah.
Right. Josh? Josh, did you want to say something?
When I think of white privilege, it for me understanding how real it is and how long it's existed was when about 5 years ago, me and my mum having a conversation, and she shared with me that she never wanted my name to be Kamara, which is a very black African Muslim name, because she thought it would impede me. She thought it would have a real negative effect for me growing up, applying for jobs,
Mm.
how I'd be perceived on applications. And that's when it really hit me about 5 years ago, that she'd had that conscious thought when she was pregnant
Mm.
about my surname because of how it would affect me growing up, especially in England, in the UK, with a name like Kamara. So that's when I started to really be conscious of it as white privilege, because we used to say, if I was white, we didn't really. I think it is a phenomenon that has grown and is more commonly spoken about. And for me, one of the main things with white privilege, which has a massive effect on everybody and the whole outlook, is the school bias of white privilege, where we were taught about Churchill. The only black history we had was a bit about the civil rights movement. There was no black history in school. I feel like white history was taught, which was a privilege to white people, but black history wasn't really taught, and it's powerful, it's liberating history. I mean, stuff like the Battle of Adwar, which was in Ethiopia in the mid-1800s, where the Italians tried to invade Ethiopia, and there was 9,000 Italians, and there was a lot less Ethiopians. But within an hour, 6,000 Italians were dead, 3,000 were captured, and Italy couldn't invade Ethiopia.
Mm.
And that's why Mussolini, down the line, re-invaded Ethiopia. And, that kind of history where, we're taught as inferior and needing a white man to come and save us, when actually we were very civilized, isn't taught in history. Also with the Haitian Revolution, overturning the slavery. So
Mm.
all these very rich historical moments are not taught in school. So we go through our whole school life, and white people go through the whole school life thinking that slavery is the only part of history that we have, when that's not the case. So that's a huge white privilege, which leads on to the ignorance of, sadly, a lot of white people feeling that racism is gone, as Ali said, and it doesn't exist anymore. And that's when a lot of challenges, when you speak about or Pan-African, or when you speak about, just black love, you're challenged a lot of the time. Or when you're talking about institutional racism or stereotypes and microaggressions, what we're going to get onto, you're currently challenged because there is this ignorance, this privilege that it doesn't exist. Hey, that slavery got abolished years ago. What's your problem? And that really feeds into the narrative of racism and the daily problems that we have. And it is something where you need like an armor to deal with this daily. And when I learned that from an early age, going to West Africa and back, but even more so recently when I came back from Barbados, where I just felt at home. I just felt at home. The managers were black, the restaurant owners were black, the taxi drivers were black. Everybody was black and thriving and very capable of doing any type of job. And I didn't have to explain myself anywhere. I didn't have to have this armor on of, you know, answering awkward questions, or you could just freely be yourself. And I remember getting back on the plane and I had this sadness. And when I got back into Birmingham Airport, greeted by, you know, customs, and I thought, here we go. I'm back. Better put the armor back on to deal with all these consequences of white privilege, which is just in society. So there's when I think of white privilege, there's a lot of underlying issues in our schools, in the corporate world, in many settings, which have a real effect on us daily, and it is very real, and it's something that we have to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I have a very interesting relationship with white privilege, because in the scheme of things, as a black man, I have had access to a lot of what people consider to be white privilege. And I've come to understand white privilege as, or even if you could just take the white out of it, you know, there's a certain privilege that comes from the state of mind of expectation that something is going to go a certain way for you. And of course that works both ways. You know, if you have a negative expectation, it works the same way. And I guess because of my history, I found that I've had a high expectation for what I could expect, especially professionally. You know, as a child, I got to watch my dad be in charge of recording sessions and be the smartest person in the room, you know, without any, you know, debate. And so that was kind of what I expected when I grew up. And what's interesting is, as black as I am, that still worked. That privilege still afforded to me, because if I walk into a room like I know what I'm doing, people get in line with that, you know. Now, I'm not going to say that I have not been underestimated at first sight. In many cases, people are like, well, this guy, he can't know. But I can quickly change that around. And ultimately, the end result ends up being that because I was underestimated in the beginning and showed myself to be capable, it actually expanded on the perception of me. It's like, wow, this guy is like, so I have had difficulty with the way that the white privilege phenomenon has been depicted or the way a lot of people look at it. And I just get the sense that there is a lot of energy out there that says white people are privileged and that they need to step away from that, you know, and stop expecting so much for themselves because other people aren't getting, you know, people of color are not getting this treatment, so they shouldn't either. And my take on it is that white privilege is definitely real. And even though I've had a different experience than the majority of people of color may have had, it's still very real. And I'll admit that it was something that didn't come to me as quickly as it might to others, you know, especially professionally. So it definitely exists, but the antidote to me is that we as people of color embrace that privilege for ourselves, and that white people embrace that, help us in that way, you know, embrace that, you know, open up your mind to the fact that, hey, this person deserves everything that I have. And you know, then that way there's not this, because I see people trying to acknowledge their privilege, and in a sense there's like this underlying, well, I'm not going to ask for what I need, you know, I'm not going to talk to the manager because I don't want to be seen as a Karen, you know, I'm not going to you know, I don't want to be that white guy. And I've heard a lot of people say that, and I don't think, I think the problem with white privilege is not that white people have it, it's that everybody doesn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's
I just wanna, Cal, I just wanted to talk to that point.
yeah.
That not everybody has the white privilege. Not everybody has the privilege. I've been told by many people of color that no, we just have to appropriate it for ourselves. We have to walk into a room and not see color. We have to. I'm saying that I cannot. You know, there's a huge big part of me. I will not. You know, I will not agree with that. Because why should we make as if, you know, we need to you know, to like some, it's almost as if though, as if somehow we need to like now balance the scales by taking the privilege for ourselves. I'm saying we need to first acknowledge white privilege. We need to acknowledge that it exists, and it is like it tipped the scales in the favor of white people for centuries, for too long. And to now put this on somebody, on us, to say that like no, you know, the white people, like, you know, just you know, just appropriate privilege for us. No, we can, if I go, if the police comes around, they will catch me first. They will not catch the white person. If like I walk down the street, I will be perceived as a threat, white person not. I can't be like now saying, okay, I have a blanket now, I'm gonna just put it over the both of us, black, you know, black and white, and like everything is gonna be. No, I'm saying no. There needs to be a healthy acknowledgement that white people have been privileged through this system of you know, corporate apartheid, like the all over the world. Because I can tell you this, I've seen this everywhere that I've lived. I always need to prove myself that you know, I need to prove that I'm worthy to be here. The white person already has the privilege. You know, he or she, you know, they you know, they're worthy of being here. I need to prove myself. If there's an argument, I'm always like, I always have to explain myself. I always have to deal with the negative criticism. And this almost this judgment that like, yeah, you know, he's more likely to do this than the white person. And even as a priest, I have to contend with the fact that like white priests are better than non-white priests. People just perceive them to be better. And, I'm saying we need to first, it would be, for me, it would work better if we acknowledge the white privilege, if we bring it out into the light so that, it's out in the open. We talk about it, we deal with it, and then, because there's like for instance, I will not get a loan if like a white person will get a loan. Colored people, people of color, they're still discriminated against because of the white privilege. And the thing is it's so institutionalized that even people of color defer to white privilege, because they know that it's so powerful and so entrenched in society, in financial, corporate, in every sphere. Like, I get on a bus, people look at me funny, they will I will always be perceived as a threat as to a white person. And this needs to change. I don't want this the burden of the responsibility that I need to like now help the white person to like diminish this white privilege. I'm saying no. White people have been benefiting from this privilege for centuries, and we just need to be honest and open about it and say, like, guys, be real now. Come to the party. If you want to change this, you have to take your fair share.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying. And I don't want what I'm saying is to be construed to say that this is all our job, and to let white people off the hook in any way. But at the same time, I think we have to recognize that we're all in this boat together. And maybe you could say black people are rowing on the left and white people are rowing on the right. Okay. And at the end of the day, the boat's going to go the fastest if there is equal power on both sides. And because of it's very paradoxical, and it's hard work to find that balance between those two truths, because it's very true that there's white privilege, and I want to be clear that is there and that it needs to be acknowledged and called out. But at the same time, there is an element that that can only be fixed by us, because we have the perception now. It's like a disease, One person may have started the disease, but now everybody that has it has to find the cure for themselves. And we have to realize that we've bought into it. We've bought into the idea that white people are better and that we would be better off if we were white. And that's not true either. So everybody has a burden in this. And as the oppressed people, we have a tendency to say, well, hey, look, we've been the ones that have been getting screwed around for the last 400 years. Now it's your turn. And that's true to some degree, but at the end of the day, if we lay down our oars, this boat is going to go around in circles, and we're never going to get anywhere. And so it's the hard work is embracing all of those truths, because I think that a lot of the white people that resist this message resist it because the burden is being placed on them. And the truth of the matter is this is nobody's fault who's alive now. These things were set into place by people who are all dead. So a white person now wakes up with this privilege that they don't even realize they had, and they're wrong for it, and they're being attacked for it. And I guess you could say, well, let's not worry about them. Let's worry about us now. But at the end of the day, we all get screwed if we don't all get taken care of. We all suffer if all of our problems aren't addressed. So the hard work is not forgetting that, yes, white privilege is real. And as a white person, you have inherited an unfortunate set of circumstances. And as a black person, you have too. But as all of us as passengers in this boat with oars, we all have to row. And everybody has to do their part. And white people have not realized the part that they have to do. And I, as a black person who has made some advancements in those areas, I can see what the work is, because white privilege can be defeated in two ways. One, by a black person who embraces the privilege, and two, by a white person that acknowledges that it exists and supports the change that needs to take place. And so, I've done some of that, and I can tell you, as much as I have been able to accomplish as a black person in a white world, we couldn't possibly do it all on our own, and neither can they. So that's my.
I think that point that you made, Carl, that racism is a disease, but we can't allow to be infected by it, where we have this type of mentality, this type of victim mentality, where we go into situations, like you said, and it has that negative impact on us, where we don't dare to dream, we don't dare to compete, we don't dare to, follow out our ambitions, and that's the fine line, and it can be difficult to do that depending what environment you're in, but we can't allow ourselves to be infected. And if we are infected, we need to work towards a cure, so we can, because there is a game to be played, and you have to understand the game, and that is being very honest and acknowledging, yep, there is white privilege. Right, okay, so that's there. What can I do then to navigate around or through or under or over this? Because I've got to progress in my life. So you have to have this robust mentality and attitude where you can't let it defeat you. I've always used it as fuel, and have it as like seen as a competitive thing to fight against, or to work. It's a reality. It's a harsh reality. You have to accept it. You have to accept it. It is a harsh reality. So I agree with you on that point.
Oops.
I agree with to many degrees.
I just need to just 1 second. I just need to be honest and say that, like, I have the world of respect for you guys, but like, I'm still saying there's no need for us to row with oars. A white person can just get us a motorboat, like a motor, and the boat can go faster. And it's like, on all analogies limp, but but what I'm saying is, like, I've seen this too much, that we're saying now, the white people that are alive now, they cannot be made to pay for the white people who went before them. But I'm saying they're benefiting from the wrong that was done in the past. And I'm saying that, like, this is not even, I'm not even calling restorative justice on this thing. I'm just saying that, like, it is what it is. Yes, I respect you, especially like young people like yourself, Josh, who's saying that you're using this as fuel. But there's too many of us who've lost themselves, trying to make either sense of it, trying to either fight it, and trying to use it as fuel. There's too many of us in jail, too many of us on drugs, too many of us with lost lives, because we tried to fight this system, this biased system that I know.
That's what it is right there, that word system. It's deep ingrained in the system.
Exactly.
And there is still people who are, you know, profiting from this system.
Yes.
Definitely. So, and that's where the problem lies, is the system. And it's the effect it has on the people. It filters down. You know, you've got these people at the top who create the system, and it filters down into the people. They're just as infected as, it's a disease as well. You know, it can shape their outlook and the way that they perceive black people, white people, their position. So that's why I use it as fuel, because to fight a system as an individual, you know, you have to be speaking to individuals. You have to be speaking to the people, because my voice can't really be heard. I don't feel like my voice can be heard to the people who are manipulating and who have created the system. Like Cal says, it is it's institutional racism. You know, this has been put in place. It's not a mistake. It has been man-made. It's been maintained, and it is still here. It's growing, it's evolving, but it's the system. And that's why we need change in the police force, especially in the UK, well, everywhere where we're from. You know, the police force, the system needs to change. The education system needs to change. You know, the employment system needs to change. The prison system needs to change. All these systems where people are benefiting from white privilege, which filters down to stereotype and microaggressions, that's where I see the problem lying, and that's where there needs to be the change. That's how I see it.
I am so honored and also personally challenged, you know, to listen to all of you. And I feel like this is such a huge, I mean, it has tentacles in every aspect of our lives. 20 minutes has turned into 30, as I knew it would.
Well,
and that's okay. It's perfect. This is just the beginning of this conversation. I think the thing that I would like to say, as the one white person in this conversation, is that the thing that really cinched it for me was when I began to recognize I can walk down. I mean, I, as a woman, have fears walking down certain streets. But for the most part, I can walk down any street in any neighborhood and not feel I have to look over my shoulder to make sure there's no cops around, you know, or anybody who's going to judge me or attack me for the color of my skin. And that is a fundamental privilege that I didn't earn. I didn't choose even. It was handed to me. And the system that we have today, we have all inherited. And we've all also inherited all of the mindset, all the assumptions about ourselves and other people, our way of moving through the world, you know, our sense of what we deserve and what we're entitled to, all of that we've inherited. And when I listen to the three of you, I hear three different cultures, you know, with different kind of recent histories, old histories. Ali, you've experienced things in your lifetime that none of the rest of us have, with apartheid being so new, really. And so it's such a privilege to hear these different facets of a truth that is bigger than any of us. I think my goal in this conversation is to help other white people understand, open the heart. When I first had people sort of pushing the idea that I was privileged because I was white, I felt defensive, because my experience was I grew up with things against me too, but I just hadn't opened, I don't know how to express it exactly. I just hadn't ever been able, I mean, I cared, but I have never walked in your shoes. And it was only when I began to imagine what that is like that I began to get, wow, I really do have privileges that I'm not responsible for, but I am now responsible for. That awareness makes us all responsible. So we have to meet somewhere in the middle to co-create a solution. I believe there are good people on all sides who want that. And there's a whole lot of people that are not yet willing to relinquish their power and relinquish that privilege because it means a lot of money,
Yes.
fundamentally.
Yes. Yeah.
So because we are, quote unquote, over time, I would like to just throw it back to each of you for your closing thoughts. And we'll wrap this episode up knowing that this is sure to come out again in our next conversations. And so what kinds of things would you like to share before we close?
Well,
I'll just say,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Josh, go ahead.
I'll just say that the word privilege is not attached to wealth, social, economical, or class. The white privilege, regardless of all those aspects I've just named and what you've just mentioned, Catherine, you don't have to consistently defend or be aware or conscious of the microaggressions, the stereotypes that we constantly face, which we can't hide, the color of our skin. So just be aware that the privilege isn't attached with class, it's attached with the differences, which unfortunately are seen as a negative rather than something that we can all embrace.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Catherine, you in your last remarks, you said something that I am really feeling right now, is that there are a variety of experiences represented here, and I just want to acknowledge that my perspective is somewhat privileged by. And I think I kind of covered that in the beginning, but I just want to reiterate that my experience comes from being a privileged Black person amongst Black people. And so, I certainly don't expect that everyone should be able to adopt that. But the other thing that you said is that, with all the different experiences that we have here, we all have something to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And Allie, it's people like you that brought to my attention the depth of it. And even in my visits to South Africa, talking to people and hearing their experiences, I realized that, wow, this is another level, and some of the things that were happening even more recently, were things that I didn't realize. But ultimately, what it comes down to is that we all have something to offer. I think that I can let some people who may not realize it know that we have more power as Black people than we might think, but then, someone with a more serious experience or a more negative experience, can say, hey, look, you really need to know how bad this is. And a white person can say, hey, I really just woke up and here I was, and I think that it's the culmination of all of those perspectives that are going to let us know what the elephant in the room really looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Cal. Allie, any closing thoughts from you?
I was just gonna say that, like, white privilege is so real, that like, you know, us talking about it, it just brings, you know, back, you know, it just accentuates all the you know, it's those very little things, but it's, for me, it's the huge big things. And I'm saying that, like, if we could actually, like, constructively deconstruct
Mm.
the white privilege, you know, we could win. And I've never hated white people in a long, you know, I haven't hated white people in a long time. It took me a while to get over that. But now that I'm here where I'm now, I'm saying that, like, the opportunities for rolling back the historical advantages that white privilege got white people is, there's too many opportunities passing us by in you know, because for the mere fact that we want to talk about it, we want to, like, dissect it, we want to argue whose fault it was, and meanwhile people actually losing their lives, you know, children are being raised in this, you know, because our children are now being raised, and they didn't cause this, our historical, you know, disadvantage, but they're suffering, and they're still suffering now.
Yeah.
And, you know, meanwhile we make as if we have the time to have this, you know, conversation that's going to go on for generations now. I'm simply saying that, like,
Right.
what you're saying, why the conversation is not progressing is because of the money. You know what, when it comes down to the bottom line, that is it, you know. And it's, uh, unfortunately, we live in a world where those who have the means of production, those who have the money in the bank, you know, they live the life.
I just want to say one more thing. Having this conversation has just brought to the surface something, and a lot of emotion. And I think the reason why, because I'm not being insensitive at all to anyone's situation, I agree with you, Ali, on so many levels. And I think the reason how I've had to adopt that mentality is for survival. Because with white privilege, if my mother wasn't an educated woman, I may not be here today. The situations I got into in my teens, I've had people lost ones. In fact, rest in peace to Marcus. We lost a friend last week, which is, if you really look at the situation he was in, I've lost people to all sorts of situations, and it all filters around white privilege and the institutional racism system that is in place. So I feel, for me, it was a mindset I've had to adapt
To survive.
and adopt. So when I say that, it's not saying it insensitively. It's just a mindset. Me as an individual, as a coping mechanism, I've had to adopt. But 100% hear what you're saying, and appreciate your outlook being in South Africa as well, which is an intensified environment.
Yeah, thank you, Josh, and I thank all of you. I think there's no question that to unravel the very tight ropes that have held us all these years is going to be a painful process. It's going to be painful for us as whites. It's going to be painful for you as people of color. All of us have something we have to give up and something we have to take responsibility for. And it is a system, you used the word deconstruct, Ali, and it is a system that has to be dismantled. That is not going to happen in a year. So it's a policy, it's a process of changing policies. It's a process of recalibrating economics, and it's a process of conversations like this. I think ultimately each of those children, they're the ones that break my heart, because they all come in innocent, everyone. And it's that we reach out to those children personally, you know, when we can, anytime we can, and simply share the privilege that we have of knowing, of self-awareness, of personal responsibility, of our own self-esteem, because ultimately at the bottom of all of this, that's what will allow us to make the change. Each of us, every human being has to come from that place. So I don't want to cut anybody off, but I am going to close this conversation for now. We are about to record another episode, which is on the topic of colorism. So I would invite you all to look out for that and join us for that one too. But this brings us to the end of this time that we have today. And honestly, I really thank you, Cal and Josh and Allie, for being here today, for trusting me, for speaking your truth, for not holding back too much, and just for taking a stand of the possibility of coming together. I also want to thank each of you who has taken the time to watch this program all the way to the end. It's each one of you doing what you know how to do, taking risks in your life for what you know is right, that will turn the momentum of this moment into lasting change. So thank you very much for joining us. This is Black Men Speak, and I'm Catherine Robertson-Pilling.